presentation. So, see, I just thought to, and after listening to the hardcore technology presentation, I just thought to cover something which is the blend of geopolitics, which we are daily, day in, day out now talking. Even if we are not talking a couple of months back or a year back, now everybody is talking about it, right? And interestingly, the geopolitics is changing the whole paradigm of technology, right? And in last couple of months of time frame, we started talking too much about the sovereignty and all, and a major trigger around it was geopolitics, right? What we have seen in Middle East, there are so many wars going on, there are so many export controls, sanctions, and so on and so forth. This is all the instruments being used for as a geopolitics, right? So this is what I thought to cover today. And this is something that happened recently, I just added. So not specific to any company, but if you look at what happened with Anthropic, so there was restrictions on Mythos and Fable. Now we got the access back around Fable. Then OpenAI, there was some news that government is asking them to delay the rollout. And then there is a accusation by Anthropic on Alibaba regarding some distillation of the models. Now, if you see what's happening, export controls or overall control on the technology usage, then the delay in the rollout, again, the usage of the technology, and then some accusation in the sense, if we allow usage, then somebody is going to use it and use it for their own benefits. That's more like state-to-state engagements. And recently, and since when that happened, India was talking about like if we miss access on that, that's a very difficult situation, because many of the enterprises planned their engagements in future basis those technologies. And this is not only this technology or a specific technology. If these kind of situations keeps coming, it's going to create uncertainty in overall technology usage, right? So then recently during Pax Silica Summit, there was some discussion happened which came in the public that this continuity is going to remain in place. But largely, if you see what's happening around it, so it is about the control on the frontier tech, the security of the frontier tech. At the same time, the lot of discussions on the sovereignty of the model, sovereignty of the compute, and lot of extension around it, and then the AI geopolitics. So this I just thought to give a opening kind of a scenario, what's happening. And on top of it, if you just check last 2 days of news, so now there is a news, again, validation is required, but the US government is asking Anthropic to extend their 5% stake, those kind of news, and SoftBank is going to invest almost $10 billion to the frontier models. Those kind of things are happening. At the same time, there was a statement given by SpaceX, SpaceX, that they are getting into the physical AI and device level AI, which is again going to transform a lot of aspects. So on one hand, the technology moments are happening, the physical AI to the device level AI and so on and so forth. At the same time, a lot of capital is being pumped to this kind of ecosystem. And then there are export controls and the state level control happening, which is creating a very complex situation. As a country, as a professional from this country, we need to see what we need to do so that we'll have our edge on top of it. Now with this, I'll move to what's happening. If you see what shift is happening, and while we see global technology order is being, I'll say, rewired, what's happening exactly? So you'll have cost-led supply chain is now shifting towards the trusted and aligned supply chains. Now supply chain is something which is very critical, and any one of us who is dealing with the tech, we are aware that overall supply chain security is something which day in, day out concerning us. So now that shift where we were just talking about the L1 is now shifting towards how can we have more trusted and aligned supply chain. Then the internet governance that we have kept talking since so long, now we are talking about the AI governance, cloud governance, and overall telecom governance, and so on and so forth. It's just not limited to these three elements. Then your digital trade is now moving towards the data and infrastructure sovereignty, and that's what in last 1 year of time frame especially we kept talking about it. Then cybersecurity as IT function, definitely it has changed, and that's a great thing. From typical that tick mark based approach couple of years back to the real-time management of security because of the AI and such evolution. And now we are talking about resilience, which means we are aware that Now, question is not whether something can go wrong or not, but if something goes wrong, as a country, as an industry, as a sector, or as an individual organization, how quickly we are bouncing back. And that is something that is changing, and overall narrative of cyber is changing. And then largely the diplomacy through dialogues, which was happening, and a lot of trade, exports, things were happening. Now it is changing towards the technology coalition. That is something which has changed significantly, and the key drivers were the same thing that initially I talked about, the strategic elements, which is AI, chips, then quantum, the cyber tools, and so on and so forth. On top of it, we have regulatory and compliance requirements which are coming in. For example, EU AI Act, I think 2nd of August is going to be enforced further. That platform regulations and so on and so forth. Even in India, we have so many regulations coming in, right? So one is that sectoral regulation, one is the national regulation, and as a country where we have a lot of exports happening around technology outside India, it is very pertinent for us to see what's happening across the globe, what's happening in US, what's happening in Europe, and so on and so forth. And then the standard competition. That I'll definitely double click, because in general, India's representation on standards is not that great, right? Whether it's telecom standards or other standards, if you see, many of the countries are quite aggressive in terms of promoting and pushing their people in standard development processes. This is something that as a country we need to look at, because standards is something that defines the technology in future, right? And without taking the name of the country or name of the organizations, in certain platform you will find a huge bunch of people just driving those narrations around technology standards, which is actually going to transform the technology in the future. So this is something definitely we need to pick up. And then hybrid conflict, I'll just cover in the subsequent slide. There are certain live signals which are going on. That US restrictions, we kept hearing about it, export control sanctions around AI. China is talking about their export control on the critical minerals. And then there are certain trust level, or I'll say bilateral agreements or arrangements going on with certain countries like India, and US has certain arrangements on the critical technologies. So this is like a background, and if you see, sorry, yeah. So this is something that is being reflected as the strategic stack, technology stack for time being, where you have critical minerals, because without critical minerals you cannot work on the semiconductors. Then you have GPUs, data centers, cloud, and so on and so forth. I'll take one example here. If you have heard about that Majorana 1, the quantum chip, initially Majorana 1, now Majorana 2 got launched by Microsoft, which is the quantum chip. It's mostly, if you get into the details, it is actually a new kind of material that they have created, which is going to transform a lot of things from the quantum point of view. But if you see a lot of statements which are coming in from the researchers, the clear-cut dimension is it is being done by AI. Because a lot of 21 years of research that they have been doing, a lot of things changed because of the AI, and in last 1.5 year of time frame, they culminated those research because of the AI models that they could create around those materials. So it is like a vicious cycle which is getting created. Once quantum is up, it is going to augment the capabilities from the AI side, and at the same time, when we have that AI, it is going to augment a lot of such research work, and that's why last year you would have seen certain Nobel Prizes went to people who have leveraged AI to solve their problem statements, right? So that kind of phenomenal changes which are going to happen, and it's already happening. And this vicious cycle, having one technology complementing other, or I'll say each other, is going to transform things. And here, there are certain risk spots, sorry, like model poisoning and all those kind of things which are happening on the AI front. But at the same time, if we miss that opportunity to build our capability, and that capability is not just developing that models, developing that frameworks, or developing the tools and technologies, also about our comprehension and proactive approach towards those domains, right? Because even if we don't have the technology, the repercussions, or I'll say the benefits will come to us. For example, AI advancement, irrespective of geography, whether it's a mature geography or a mid-scale geography or I'll say a laggard geography, irrespective of that. And this I'm saying from the technology point of view. The cybercrime, the deep fakes and misinformation, disinformation is actually impacting everyone. So irrespective where we stand, the technology is going to impact us positively or negatively. Considering that, we have to be prepared, and having that broader understanding what's going on in the ecosystem and how can we prepare, definitely from the technology point of view, but at the same time from the law enforcement point of view, from preparedness aspect, we need to have a detailed comprehension on that. Given the time and hand, I'll just try to skip, and probably I'll be more than happy to take it up offline as well. But yeah, these risk spots are actually triggering a lot of concerns from regulators, from as a professionals managing the security in our organizations, to policymakers at the national level. Now, this is actually, with all this context, you will see, so far we have kept talking about the choke points, which are the oil choke points or transit choke points. But now the technology choke points which are coming up is like these rare earths, you have firmware, you have GPU supply chain, EDA, this is electronic design automation, all those kind of things. This is something which is actually defining the whole phenomena. And if you see the pressure points which are getting created, so look at China, export control on critical minerals. If you see US, they have edge on the advanced chips, so there are certain export controls on them. Taiwan is again coming as a hub for semiconductors, but it's a huge geopolitical exposure, because it's a small geography with a lot of threats. If something goes wrong, what will we get out of it, right? Then Europe having a lot of concerns over China minerals, including their major ally US from the technology dependency, because a lot of things are still coming from US for them. Then largely if you see the server supply chain, that's also creating a lot of trouble and a lot of discussions, because at the end of the day, to enable anything in terms of adoption or in terms of creation of the technology, you need the supply chain intact. So this is something which is happening, and from India point of view, electronic manufacturing to our, this India-Japan is because it is happening, so I just kept it. Otherwise, it's a lot of bilateral and multilateral engagements that we are going ahead with. The critical minerals partnership, just to make sure that we are not relying on one. For example, if you look at, I think EV, around EV, that lithium ion, if I remember it correctly, it is around 70% dependency on a single country. Now, how can we diversify that? That is nothing to do with cyber, but these kind of dependency is actually going to create trouble if something goes wrong with the relation with that individual country. So those kind of dependency in digital world, we have to remove, and I'll say expand our base to multiple other partners, so that that reliance and the continuity will remain in place. And then definitely the security lookouts, these are the things that anyways we keep seeing, and anything goes wrong on this front where your supply chain opacity or hardware trojan or anything, and we have seen examples. Given time and hand, I cannot cover all the examples, but any of these area you will pick, you will find one major examples that has already happened in the ecosystem, and we have seen and we've witnessed that upfront. Now, with all this background, these are the conflict which is becoming multi-layer conflict. Things are becoming kinetic. There is no war which is being led by only weaponaries. A lot of things are happening, and if you see, a lot of learnings are coming from this. If you see Russia-Ukraine war, it's wholly or significantly dependent on the technology, whether it's a drone kind of technology or disinformation. Most of the time, we don't know even what we are hearing is correct or not, and we are building our perception, right? Europe or Baltics, which one area which is a bit, I'll say, undermined is undersea cable. Lot of dependency, and many of you would have heard about during this Hormuz time frame that is still going on actually. Lot of undersea cable is passing through that, that route. If something goes wrong there, and our, if I again recall it correctly, it's somewhere around 30% data which is flowing from that route for India, west side data. So if something goes wrong there, what would be our continuity plans? And for Baltics and Europe, and especially the upper side of the Europe, if you see, undersea cables are the lifeline for them. And there were certain instances where those undersea cable got cut in past. So those kind of things are actually being discussed on various forums, and we are also concerned about it. But as an individual, we have to know what can go wrong, which might not be directly associated with us. But that's actually going to change a lot of things in terms of our continuity plans. Similarly, the Indo-Pacific and so on and so forth, as a crisis management capabilities, if you see, attribution is something that that is there. If you remember a couple of months back, Singapore has put some attribution to China on one of the cyber attack. It was a brilliant example of a kind of a public-private partnership in that sense. They have used certain information coming in from one of the private sector organization, leveraged it, basis that on the technical front, they have attributed China. Those kind of things are something which is happening where industry, government can come together and react on various things. That was a major message being discussed at the global forums. Incident coordination and now incident because it's not happening for a specific geography. One example that generally I take, any small incident can have a organization level, sector level or even national level ramification, and that pace has increased significantly. So on that front, this coordination needs to be very strong in the organization at the sector level as well as at the national level, but at the international level as well. A lot of considerations are there, and that's why we have CERT-to-CERT collaboration with different countries where we are exchanging threat information, but we have certain criteria and consideration, what we are sharing with them, what we are receiving with them, and if that information can go to somebody, some other countries which we don't want. All those kind of considerations are there. But these are the aspects that we have to look at. This is the last slide. Quickly, I'll wrap it and then I'll close it. So far, India has actually built its brand on digital payments, DPI platform, and wherever we go, and as I lead the government, global trade and diplomacy function, so while we engage with the counterparts, this is something upfront coming in, and especially the digital payments. The data economy, the AI adoption is happening. All of those aspects are actually shifting to something else. Now, digital payments, for example, we have built a world-class brand around it, and especially in DPI. Now that's shifting towards the resilience. It's already happening actually. If you see our regulators, they are coming up with a lot of new regulations around resilience, and that term especially you will find upfront over there. And in terms of strategic terrain for India, if you look at undersea cable, I have kept highlighting, and these days I am highlighting it more actually because this is something very critical. And if you see, there are certain actions we have already taken. Certain eastern side cables we are deploying so that we'll have more connectivity and more, I'll say, continuity if something goes wrong. This is actual resilience that we are talking about. So it's not just happening at one segment, it's happening throughout. Again, given the time, I'll stop here and would love to discuss it further. But yeah, last thing I'll say, we have to build the trust layer, and trust layer has to be built definitely at the organization level, sector level, overall industry level, national level, at the same time at the international level. And that is only possible if the whole ecosystem, us coming together and doing it. Nurturing the startup ecosystem, nurturing the regulatory ecosystem, contributing back to those kind of things which are coming in from regulations, like most of the things are consultation based, so what kind of insights we are providing. I talked about the standards, how willingly and actively we are participating and contributing to that, so that it's going to definitely individually help us, but at the same time, it's going to create the national narrative. And from cyber point of view, it's definitely going to create a major brand contribution to the brand India for cyber. And that's something that we have kept doing. We have reached to the next level, but yeah, hopefully we'll make it to the further next level and have a extensively well-known brand India for cyber. With this, I'll stop here. Thank you. Jai Hind.